Okay, so we're assuming now that these have come back from the clinic. They've been tried in and they're okay. I'm just putting some finishing touches to the waxwork here.
Your brulee torch.
With the brulee torch, yeah. Where it's been scratched or marked during transit or during the try-in. The next thing we need to consider then is the post-dam line. I'm cutting a post-dam in. This is the extent of the denture as it stands at the moment. And when you lift it off, you can see where the old denture was, because it's left an indentation in the pallet. I'm just drawing it on. Oh, you wouldn't normally do this, it's just to show you where the old one is. So this one's come back and wants the post dam to match the old denture. So this is a little chisel type tool. I think it's called a Mitchell's 10, and that's used just to carve the post dam in. And the post dam is deep at the posterior, and it tapers off into the pallet.
It's quite hard to see there, isn't it? But
yeah, you can see it a little bit here. Can you see the shape of the chisel? Yeah. It follows that shape of the chisel. Yeah. So it's deep at the back and then tapers into the pallet, and that's going to create the seal across the back of the denture. And we bring the post dam right up around the back of the tuberosity there and down into the buccal sulcus, just lightly down into the buccal sulcus, and then that's repeated all the way up and to the other side of the denture. So the denture is now sealed all the way around onto the model to stop any plaster getting onto it. This is now the first process in making a mould of the denture. So hot wax knife, small amount of wax, seal all the way around the denture onto the model. Same with the lower denture. And then we remove the model from the articulating base with a gentle tap of the plaster knife, and that was the purpose. Yeah, that was the purpose of the chamfering then, so we can take the model out and reposition it.
Yeah, you've got to be gentle, because that the articulating plaster, or white plaster used, is rather soft, isn't it? So it's easy to destroy everything. Ah, a flask.
A flask, yes. So this is what we're going to use to make the mould. That's why we had to move it from the articulating base, because these flasks are only a certain height, so we wouldn't be able to fit them in.
Have you Vaseline those?
I have put a smear of Vaseline on the mating surfaces of them, and on the outside, so the plaster comes off easier later. So we're making the first half of the mould then. This is just normal plaster of Paris in the shallow half of the mould, and we're going to use this to secure the model into this half of the mould. So the model's been soaking in some water.
You've got to wait until the bubbles stop, haven't you?
Wait till the bubbles stop, yeah. Otherwise it's the bubbles can come out and into your plaster, and also the models would dry the plaster out too quickly as well.
It doesn't stick.
So we pop those in, let the plaster set a little, and then what we're doing is cutting the plaster between the model and the edge of the flask, and we're aiming to create a mould that has no undercuts, so that when we make the second half we'll be able to remove one from the other without causing any damage.
Yeah. And you should be making the slope from the periphery of the dental model to the edge of the flask to the inside of the flask, shouldn't you?
Yeah.
Because it's easy with the knife just to drag it round and create a nice line, but then the flask won't shut properly.
Yeah, you need to keep the mating surfaces clean so that they'll go all the way together. Okay, same with the lower. Just cleaning the edges of the flask again. And then once it's firmed up a little bit, you can run it under the tap and just smooth the plaster off. Clean any excess off the flask.
You've got to be careful here, haven't you? Because it's very easy to just sort of run your finger through and the plaster disappears if you're not careful. But
okay, so you can see there we've got a nice smooth section of plaster. There's no undercuts. There might be a little bit at the heel of that one actually.
I see it come off.
We'll see what happens there. And then once it's set, we allow it to dry, let it set, and then we put a real thin smear of Vaseline on the plaster surfaces, and that's going to stop the second half of the mould sticking.
It's very important not to forget that.
Yeah.
When I was learning, I forget it quite a lot, and it's go do it again time.
So we'll fill the deep half of the mould now, and then we put some plaster into all the fine surface detail of the denture.
Now you're using a different plaster.
Yeah, this is mixed with Kaffa this time, so the plaster is going to be a lot tougher. We use the tough plaster because when we pack the denture, we put the mould under a lot of load, and this is going to, this part of the mould will be under a lot of load, and in the other half of the denture, the one that we've just done, it'll be the model that's under load, and that's already made out of tough plaster and just needs securing in place.
Now this is the tricky bit, isn't it? And making sure you've got no air on the teeth.
That's right.
Otherwise you end up with a denture with lots of little lumps and bumps all over it. And straight in.
Turn it over, line up the lugs on the flask. Press it so it's completely together, and then we just leave it to bench set. We don't touch it. You don't want the plaster moving around. So that plaster now then will have gone into all the fine surface detail of the denture, recorded that, set around the teeth, and we've then put it in boiling water just to soften the wax.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we can open the two parts of the mould up like this, and then the base plate can be removed along with the
wax should be melted on the bottom, yeah. But it should hold on to all the teeth.
Yep, that plasters around all the teeth and secures them in. So you can see there's still some bits of wax left in there, and what we'll do is just drop it in some boiling water and get rid of the rest of that until the mould's nice and clean.
Some labs have a special machine for this called a boiling out machine, don't they? Which is a bit like a dishwasher, but it smells a bit more. And it's just a spray arm of boiling water that you just drop your flasks into. Now this is sodium alginate, which is derived from seaweed, I believe, and it reacts with the calcium sulfate in the plaster and forms like a skin, doesn't it? So how many layers are you using? Just one here?
Just one, yeah. So we coat all the plaster surfaces with this, and it's going to stop the acrylic sticking to the plaster. We avoid getting it in puddles around the teeth and so on. You can see the teeth stuck into the plaster there. And then once that's dried, we can mix up some acrylic dough, and it's a monomer and polymer mixed together, and you probably know that it goes through all its stages. It's sandy and stringy and whatever, and this is the dough mixed up, and you can see it's still quite stringy here, so I'm going to put it back in the pot, and this is it once it gets to the correct stage, and it snaps.
Shouldn't it? There we go.
There you go.
Very good.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So once it's reached this stage, we can then use it to pack the denture. So very clean hands at this stage. You need to wash your hands so you don't get bits and pieces in the acrylic dough.
Is this a veined acrylic?
It is, yeah. So that's into the upper denture, so it's right over the palette. A small amount of excess in there, and then we're going to put the two halves together. Same with the lower, just in a horseshoe shape on the lower.
This is all pre-measured for you, isn't it? You know how much you need for an up and a low. It's all done for you.
And then highly technical, we put them in a big press and give them a good squeeze.
And wait. It's important not to just jam them down and then go, that's it. You've got to wait. And the excess polymer dough will come out of the gaps in the flask, and it does take a few minutes, doesn't it? We call it flash.
And it's that flash which can hold the two halves of the mould apart very slightly, and that gives rise to the increase in vertical dimension of the denture. So we can never get rid of that completely with this method of making dentures. There are other methods of converting wax dentures into acrylic dentures which do avoid the increase in vertical dimension, but this is the most popular method. These are now being put into a clamp then, which keeps them under pressure, and then they're going to go into a curing bath. So this is a container full of water, and it's going to go through a cycle of warming them up until they get to about 100 degrees, and then they'll hold them at 100 degrees for a couple of hours. The whole process takes about 5 or 6 hours. It's all automated, and then they'll be ready for knocking out of the moulds in the acrylic state. Okay, job done.
Excellent.